Yeah.
Right.
Smart man. You're one of them smarties. Okay, so I guess now we'll officially start, right?
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, now the
All right.
episode's
So,
officially begun.
hello.
Hello.
So this is episode number 3 now.
That's right, yeah.
Of Plausible Deniability, AMX.
AMX. Very important. Plausible
Right.
Deniability, AMX.
Yeah, so what's our listenership looking like so far? I assume it's high.
It's extremely high. I think we had 5 million downloads last hour.
Oh
Yeah, I mean it's sort of unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this. So we're.
I like the idea of saying that really calmly. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of wasn't really expecting it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting it. I don't know if you were. So anyway, yeah, we're very popular, and yeah. So anyway, I did. Obviously, they're low.
They're low.
Yeah.
Well, wait. So we got our YouTube up. We got it's on all the main platforms, right? It's on.
So it's not on Apple yet because
what?
Yeah, maybe you could look at this because it's like I haven't had time to sort of look into.
I might be able to do it.
The Apple account's not activated, and I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough.
Man, the way that account stuff works now is so annoying because everything's all secure. Like back when it used to just be
everything's all
username,
secure,
password, and everything, and there was no two-step bullshit and your
Right.
phone and all that. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean that is the problem. Is the two-step? Even if you use it, it's going to. Even if you log in, it's anyway. I don't know how exciting this is.
But I might be able to do it through my Apple Podcast account. Just add it.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I can as long as I have the RSS.
Oh yeah, if you can do that, that would be even better.
Yeah, because the other thing is I want to add it to the value for value.
Okay. Although, well, again, I don't.
Wait, what?
I just don't know how much of this it matters that I guess it doesn't matter that we discuss it on the thing, but I guess it doesn't. I don't know, but I'm just saying this is whether it's good to get into the weeds like this. But I was just going to say,
cut it out too.
Yeah, that's true. But
we
already
just leave it at we
started.
have 5 million downloads per.
That's true.
Per minute.
That's true. Per minute. It's quite the rate. But anyway, yeah. No. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it later. But yeah. So we don't have Apple. That's sort of the conclusion of that. But
right, we got Spotify. We got YouTube where we can see you playing games.
Yes, Crusader, Stronghold Crusader.
Nice.
2.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Nice. Second one is the best. I mean.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into it, was there anything else we wanted to talk about today? Any announcements?
Not that I know of. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I got nothing. Do you have anything?
I don't know. I got shows, but that's
do you want to plug anything? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, nobody listens. I mean, 5 million people listen.
Right. But that's not that many people.
But that's not that many people. I mean, you couldn't fit that in one.
There's a lot more people than that out there.
Yeah. You can't fit that in a club. So yeah, no, I don't know. Do you want to? I don't know.
It's fine.
Yeah, we can do it later. Okay. So, cool. Yeah, no, Semmelweis, man. Semmelweis, what'd you think?
I was honestly a little confused about this history because it feels like I've heard other things, especially about the hand washing and.
What do you mean you've heard other things? What do you mean by that?
Like I thought that hand washing was actually slightly older, and I thought that somebody else had been involved in it. I don't know.
Well, Lister is the guy that we sort of, and he's a generation after him.
Right,
He was a Scottish surgeon.
All for your gums.
Right, Listerine, exactly.
That's really silly that they called it that.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure it's like, you could probably find this stuff going into like ancient China.
Well, actually,
India
that's why I brought the Torah, because I remember when I was reading it a few years ago, there's stuff in there about sanitizing, sort of.
Right.
They don't call it sanitizing, but it's an ancient way of describing if somebody has infections, what you're supposed to do with their clothes and quarantining them and all sorts of things like that. So the idea of disease being communicable
Right.
is old. I mean,
Well,
which makes sense.
Well,
that
and
it's
I
sort
think
of an easy observation to make in a way.
Well, and yeah, no, it's old, and I think, but yeah, and your point. I mean, you were saying the Torah, so okay. Granted, that's obviously the Old Testament, but
Right.
I think this is why the Jews fared better than Europeans in the Black Death, for instance. Though, is
Sure.
because they had this sort of concept, though maybe not as well defined as later. They did
Right.
have a general idea about,
I mean, the way that they say to deal with this stuff in the Torah is kind of goofy, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, because there's probably going to be tradition and procedures and things. Because this is the thing, though, and this is the point. So Semmelweis, I guess, as a brief background, just to do a very quick summary, Hungarian physician, born like early 19th century,
Right.
1818 or something like that. Doesn't matter. I was going to look it up, and then I was like, it doesn't matter. What am I doing?
probably the early 1800s, because I think 1844 was his big breakthrough, right?
47, and yes.
Okay,
yes.
sure.
Yeah, but yeah.
So how old
exactly.
would he have been at that time? Probably in his late 20s, 30s.
Late,
maybe?
exactly. Yeah. So, and he died when he was like 47. So, yeah, 1818. I got it. Yeah, I was just, I had read it earlier, and I just was, I was just, showing off.
Do you remember when Beethoven died?
1827.
I thought it was 23. Could be 27. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
No, it does.
I don't know why it just made me think of Beethoven.
No, you're right. 'Cause
Those
it's
early 1800s.
dude, I was right. 1827. Dude,
yeah.
I'm
Good
really.
job.
I have
job.
weirdness with dates. I don't know. That's not true though. But yeah, I do remember though. Yeah, they really harped that because that was sort of when they said the beginning of the Romantic
Right,
period. Right, started.
Yeah, he's that crossover.
He's that crossover, or was that? Maybe I'm getting that mixed up with Bach's. This is a tangent, but maybe I'm getting that because Bach is the one where they like really use his death as a delineation
Yes.
between periods.
1750.
Yeah, exactly. 1885 or 1685. Anyway,
Let's just keep doing this. I like
yeah,
that.
let's 1885. Back to the Future. Okay, all right. Back to the past. Okay,
How-
so
yeah.
Semmelweis.
How autistic are you?
Yeah,
Your dates is amazing, dude.
It's ridiculous.
What's the date that we moved in together in college?
It would have been
August
like
28th.
it would have been like
at
the
about
14th.
4:15 p.m.
No, because move-in was always the 14th, and because the term
Okay.
started like move-out was like the 16th.
Sure.
August. I think it was like that. Something like that. Anyway, yeah. So it would have been like
Great.
whatever, 2012, August 2012, 14th.
Sure.
August
sounds
14,
right.
2012. Okay, but anyway, now forever in history as the beginning of a long-term romance, dalliance, if you will. Okay, I guess was long-term. I think that's already. I think a
Yeah, that's a
dalliance
little
is just
funny.
it's by definition short. I think. But anyway, okay. I don't know. Is that true?
I
Okay, so Semmelweis. Semmelweis, well, it's casual. Brief or casual. Yeah.
don't. Right. We have a very long-term casual relationship.
Yeah. Okay, Semmelweis, Hungarian, but was an obstetrician in Vienna, and at least that's where he was trained. And he basically had this theory that predated, as we were saying before, Lister, and not only Lister, but Pasteur, who's
Right.
the scientist who is known for germ theory, who really sort of proved scientifically that bacteria and microbes exist and are a life
Right.
form, and sort of supplanted the terrain theory, which was that diseases occur from when the body itself something happens with the body itself rather than an exterior thing
Right,
causing the issue. Like an imbalance versus an exterior thing causing the issue. So anyway, so Pasteur and then Koch was another guy that came later. And all of these came after Semmelweis, who in like 1847, as we said, was doing a bunch of studies, or he was just delivering a bunch of babies in a maternity ward.
Oh, yeah. This was wild.
Vienna.
Dude, they were killing a lot of ladies.
And yeah, exactly. And so there was two divisions. One was basically by doctors. The deliveries were done by doctors, and the other was midwives. And the one done by doctors you had tons of deaths, and the one by midwives you had none. And of course, they had all sorts of theories for why this was, and also the numbers weren't quite. Anyway, there's a bunch of details that don't really matter, but the point is that they sort of ascribed to other things like seasonal changes, and nobody thought that, oh, well, the doctors and medical students who are delivering the babies in this one place are actually also doing autopsies, and so maybe that's it. And so Semmelweis, who was at the time kind of a young faculty and, not super, I mean, he just doesn't have good tact and eventually goes insane. But anyway, we'll get to that. But he notices this trend, though, and he's like, oh, maybe we should try washing our hands, essentially, and does a series of experiments and shows that this works. But nobody really believes him because of his tact, and also he never published anything, and there was still this old guard that had been doing things a certain way, and he was basically saying that they were willfully killing people in some sense by or not willfully, but they were killing people, and now that they had sort of discovered it, they were willfully killing. Right. But yeah, no, that they were to blame in a sense because they were not washing their hands. So long story short, though, he ends up getting banished from Vienna. He leaves. He is a self-banishing, but then he sort of gets kicked out of his position by one of the bigwigs at the faculty or at the Vienna Medical School, and then decides to leave, goes back to Hungary, Pest to be specific, which I guess that must be where Budapest came from, but the university was
Buda
called
and
Pest.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because they were saying there was a society called the Pest Buddha Society. I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
That's the other way around. But anyway, so he went back there and sort of taught. But the weird thing about him, and this is, I guess, well, there's a few weird things about him, but he never published. And so that was one sort of recurring theme, is that he actually had a lot of support from his friends, from his younger friends. And if he had just published, he maybe could have sold his case a little bit better and also been a little bit more tactful. I think it just, they didn't go into the details, but it just sounds like he wasn't the easiest person to deal with.
It's interesting, like not specifically related to medical history, but drawing on Vesalius, who from last week, who seemed to be also sort of revolutionary and saying that everybody's wrong. It ends up working a lot better for him.
Right.
And so there seems to be ways of saying, you're all idiots and you're all wrong.
Well, and so,
that is persuasive, and there's a way of doing it where people will be like, you know what, fuck you, we don't care what you say.
So the author had a hypothesis for this, and if I were a professor, I'd be like, well, Anthony, do you know what the author's hypothesis for that was?
Well, no, I don't, because I didn't
go
get to that
shove
part
it.
Of the chapter.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So because he thought about that, and he sort of, I actually thought it was interesting that I think it was good that we chose Semmelweis, because I forgot how much he even makes a reference back to Vesalius because of this point that you're making, and he also makes the point that he made in the Vesalius chapter that Semmelweis was kind of like Da Vinci. Da Vinci predated Vesalius by 30 years, and it's been said by historians of Da Vinci that he, quote, woke up too early. He woke up before everybody else was doing all these crazy things, but nobody else was awake to realize how crazy and amazing the things he was doing. So his stuff sort of just went away, and then later years were able to look at it and appreciate it. But his point was, he sort of woke up before there was a good theory for what he was trying to say. They didn't think of germs really yet. And I mean, some people did, and you're right that there were examples of this, but we're talking about the European establishment, which also there's
but they had, because they talk about smallpox, and they had epidemic disease.
Yeah,
they had
Jenner had already had his smallpox vaccine by like the end of the 18th century. So, but that was still
there's a point in here. We'll come back to it because I actually have a question about it. But yeah.
Well, and I was going to say that's relatively new. First off, well, it's not new actually, but it's like even inoculation, which is what essentially Jenner's thing of vaccine is called. What do you call it? Ferulation. Anyway, doesn't matter. But you're inoculating yourself with smallpox antigens at a low degree to sort of give your body the ability to make immune cells and antibodies. So the point is, though, that wasn't like completely widespread, and there wasn't necessarily a theory. It was a finding that had been statistically established, and actually those were some of the first clinical studies to be done were of smallpox inoculation in the early 1700s in England. But anyway, the point is that yes, but there was no underlying theory which was to come in like 20 years or whatever it is with Pasteur and Koch. Koch hadn't done his postulates yet, which are these 4 sort of things that you should do to establish that a disease is caused by a certain organism or virus or something.
Well, so Pasteur was dealing primarily with bacteria, right?
Pasteur was dealing actually with yeast.
Okay.
But you can just think of it as a germ theory. Yeah. I mean, he proved the germ theory, I think, with a yeast experiment. Sure. But yes, extrapolated to all sort of.
I mean, it's my understanding that viruses as an idea are a little bit more complicated.
Viruses are complicated. Yes. Sorry. I just meant more Koch. Like, we're just talking about microscopic things. Of course, we understand viruses are not living in the sort of same sense as a
viruses,
as a cell.
Yeast, and electrons.
Right.
And other little things.
Right. But anyway, but I don't know if that answers your point, though. I think I agree with that. The Nuland's hypothesis of Semmelweis basically woke too early, and yes, there was. I guess you were saying yes, but wasn't there already ideas about this?
It seems like it was
around?
already there. Also, the idea of waking too early is slightly funny to me, because you could say that if they weren't there saying it at that time and they woke up 50 years later, maybe nobody would have said it, or nobody would have said it like that, and it wouldn't have caught on.
Well, it's the idea. Yeah, I agree by saying that they woke too early.
I mean, I understand it's sort of it's like a storytelling thing to say. It's not.
Whereas if you were to just look at it as like before any big distribution happens, you're gonna have like small cropping. So like Da Vinci was the first sign that you had this big scientific revolution on the way.
Right.
Just like Semmelweis was this initial sign.
Right.
So it was the John the Baptist.
To me, it's like saying that Jesus woke up too early.
Right. No, it's John.
But if he'd just come back 300 years later, everybody was into
No.
It was like, whoa, wait a minute.
But you missed it. He's John the Baptist. It is Semmelweis. Jesus is what Lister or Pasteur or whatever.
I hope it's Lister.
Vesalius. Listerine. Yeah. No, I think that's the idea. Yeah. John the.
I see.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's just an idea, right?
It's just other than everything else that we're talking about, which are not just
they're not. They are more. They're intractable truths.
Intractable. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So So I had a couple questions and points that I thought along the way, but actually sticking on the point about sort of waking up too early or bucking trends or philosophies or anything like that. There's actually an old Christian writing from I think it's the first or early 2nd century, from Justin Martyr, who is considered the first Christian apologist, and he's discussing what philosophy is. And it's interesting that the problems that he's discussing, this would be, 120 or something like that, is exactly the same. It never changes all the way through. So it's a little blurb I have here. So Justin Martyr says, I will tell you what seems to me, for philosophy is, in fact, the greatest possession and most honorable before God, to whom it leads us and alone commends us. And these are truly holy men who have bestowed attention on philosophy. What philosophy is, however, and the reason why it has been sent down to men, have escaped the observation of most. For there would neither be Platonists, nor Stoics, no Perpetics, no Theoretics, nor Pythagoreans, if this knowledge were one. I wish to tell you why it has become many-headed. It has happened that those who first handled philosophy, and who were therefore esteemed illustrious men, were succeeded by those who made no investigations concerning truth, but only admired the preservance and self-discipline of the former, as well as the novelty of the doctrines. And each thought that to be true which he had learned from his teacher.
Yeah. I like that.
It's wild. This idea that people are more interested in preserving the authority of the lineage of their philosophy. Like, I'm a Pythagorean. I subscribe to this because Pythagoras did. And my teacher studied from Pythagoras, and I studied from the person who studied. And so, like, they're just taking truth as being under that label rather than seeking it themselves.
Right. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And because we're on that topic, there was also something I wanted to read from this, which is actually basically making that same point. So it's interesting that you thought of this same. Well, it's not interesting. It makes perfect sense because that's what the underlying theme of this is, that you had authority figures that were sort of ossified authority figures. I don't know what you call them. But yeah, so I thought this was interesting because Bill Roth wrote about this. Bill Roth was a famous surgeon like 30 years later, and he's another guy who, if you study medicine, you'll see his name. But he wrote about this era, and he said, a generation that had been reared in an intellectual straitjacket with dark spectacles before their eyes and cotton wool in their ears. The young people turned somersaults in the grass, and the old men, whose bodies had been hindered in their natural development by the lifelong burden of state supervision, felt their world tumbling about their ears and believed that the end of the things was at hand. So I guess it's this point also thinking like, it's always this point of you have this old guard that thinks that there's new guards coming in and is going to sort of ruin everything. So it's a little bit different than what you were saying, but it was making me think about that as the similar. I guess you have these two forces. You have I guess you're making the sophist point that you have these sophists that get in power that just are worried about lineage. But you also have this point of that there is sort of a general ossification of the vanguard or the older generation that's going to be resistant to change, understandably, because like when we are all younger, we make a lot of mistakes. So most of our new ideas are wrong.
It's an inherent problem in philosophy, and I don't remember who pointed this out. One of the like IDW bunch in that bunch of podcasts. But the idea that the problem with professors or philosophers or people who deal in intellectual matters is they haven't made anything. So if you prove them wrong, that's everything. They've lost everything that they've built. Right. If you build a railroad, and then somebody proves you wrong about something, fine, you still have a railroad.
Yeah. Well, but in this case, it's like I guess that's not exactly true in this case because it's like there's still academics, but they do have actually a lot of. I mean, this is why Semmelweis. If we get back to Semmelweis's sort of decay, or deterioration is a better word. He deteriorated as he got older into sort of madness, and I think it was they make the I guess you could say retrospective diagnosis that he maybe had like early onset dementia or Alzheimer's, because at the time it was just thought that he just had a psychotic break. I was almost thinking, I mean, that could very well be true. I was almost thinking, though, he's also like, I mean, he may have had some underlying mental sort of psychosis or personality disorder, but then it was maybe like exacerbated by all of the public attention that he was doing a very public thing. So it was just making me think about now, because we think about this a lot with social media now, about how like bad it is for your health and how it can have these physical ramifications that we didn't really appreciate of just like the psychotic distress that can be caused by like a lot of negative feedback from people online. He was essentially getting that in a low 5 version, but at, he had never really probably experienced such public disaffection. I mean, and he was sparring with the biggest names in his field by the end of his life. And so it's just interesting to think that maybe that contributed to also his, I mean, it obviously contributed to it, whether it was the underlying cause, probably not, but it's just interesting to speculate.
Right. But I feel like what I was talking about is the problem of the old guard being hesitant to move. Because I feel like the problem in this case is if you make the charge to a bunch of old doctors that you are willfully killing people, they're not going to be very...
Oh, that's right. They're
not going to be very happy to accept that.
Which is exactly what...
And they probably... I mean, even in terms of natural self-preservation, it sort of makes sense that they would never want to accept that.
Exactly.
There's no way they could. How could you live with yourself if you are a doctor and you find that to be true?
Exactly. Yeah, no, and that was actually a point that was made. You're completely right. And also, it was said that the person that took over for Semmelweis, because Semmelweis basically had a year in Vienna where he was able to actually implement his method, or maybe a year or two. But in so doing, he decreased the mortality rate dramatically, right, as a proof of his concept. When he left, the mortality rate went back up. And so the guy that took over, though, while he was sort of not overtly for Semmelweis's theory, he did enact a rule that said that you had to wash your hands could not smell, basically, of corpse, as they called it. Yeah. So they were effectively doing it, but they weren't saying you have to do it. It's just your hands couldn't smell like corpse.
It's also so weird to me from a modern perspective, because I don't know where it comes from and whether that it's trained into me from sort of our social world where corpses are very gross to us. But the idea of touching a dead body and then like delivering a baby feels just intuitively like the wrong decision.
Yeah.
You need an intermediary step. You need to wash some of that corpse off. Even just water.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, you're right.
It's just a wild idea to me that's confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, he died on that sort of same idea that back in the day and still today, maybe it's just a reflection. We do these kind of crazy things in society, but then tell ourselves that they're normal, right? Because of some rationalization. And it's like he basically died 2 weeks into his stay after he was interred in an asylum because he was beaten, it's thought now. That was what they thought actually caused his death, because he was only 47, and dementia, Alzheimer's isn't going to kill you right away. So he could have lived another many years, honestly.
Sure.
But anyway, so the point is, though, that it's like that was sort of the standard thing, and it's just to think that 2 weeks after this famous doctor went somewhere, he died, and nobody like investigated this or anything like that. So I guess what I'm just saying is that also looks abnormal to me, not as sort of naturally as yours, but also to your point, though, because I feel like I keep jumping all over the place with some things that you're saying that I agree with. And like, you're absolutely right that it was the old guard was not, they were not wanting to admit their fault. And that was definitely a main reason that they would not sort of see Semmelweis's way, because it would be admittance of this. So
it's a hard thing to admit.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like actually our modern system which I don't particularly like, where it removes a lot of liability from a lot of areas of medical and pharmaceutical industries.
Mm-hmm.
That removal of the liability, I feel like, probably cuts both ways.
Right.
In that it's easier to pivot away from things that aren't working, but also it's easier to lean onto things that aren't working if they're making you money, because you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's the age-old, I feel like, issue that we're always trying to fight. Because, yeah, it's like freedom yields innovation, but it also yields, risk.
Right.
And regulation is, and it's also like you're gonna get stuff done faster. But yeah,
right.
You just need guardrails. But yeah, I mean, it's it is just interesting, and I think it's good to sort of reflect on this, especially now, because you see these same sort of things over and over again, and the dogmas are always changing in everything, not just medicine, not just science, but it's always good to look at everything trying to look at it with a smart eye. Sorry, I'm just looking. Are
you looking with that smart eye right now?
Yeah, what
a
the
smart
hell?
eye.
Yeah.
Don't give me that smart eye, boy.
I cannot. I have no smart eyes when I try to multitask.
I've never heard that before. A smart eye.
That's my multitasking brain trying to.
You're like come with a
smart eye.
A smart eye.
No, I'm. Well. Yeah. Oh, it was. So all of this was also making me think about Newton, because it was. I don't know how much you know about Newton, but it's like he also was very sort of not loath, well, maybe loath to publish. He kind of had to be prodded to publish his stuff. And Semmelweis also, like, it's just interesting that he also had this sort of feeling of not really wanting to publish. And then it was also making me think about what you were saying about how you almost have these two branches of people in really anything, but you have the people that are sort of trying to learn the game and exist in the game, and the people who are trying to sort of get at whatever it is that the game is trying to accomplish, I guess you could say.
Right.
So it's like Semmelweis was trying to actually learn what was killing
and in a sense,
people.
who cares if he's writing it down?
Yes,
it's like
exactly.
Everybody else needs it written down so they believe it, because
exactly.
it makes it easier to believe if they read it.
Exactly, because he was just looking at things with a sober eye, as was Newton,
smart eye
in a way, and a smart. Thank you. Right on. That's quite a smart eye comment right there.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no. And Newton was kind of the same way. Is that it's just like. I think he was like, other people have obviously already thought about this and just haven't, it's like, I'm not the first one that thought about gravity, so why would I publish about it? Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, hang on. I'm getting a call.
Whoa.
Yeah, is that coming through to you? Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, no. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
So I had a question for you
on
the history of the idea of disease, because there's just a little half of a sentence here where it talks about changing the notion of disease from a static to an ongoing dynamic process, and it's so weird to me to imagine what it would mean for a disease to be static. Because it seems to me obviously a process that's happening over time. Like your organs are failing, or you're getting sicker, or your lungs aren't, or anything. Even the most rudimentary thing. You're coughing more every day. Your fever is higher.
That was in context to when they were discussing like how the development of pathology and thinking about like studying the progression of an organ.
Yeah. So the identifying organ derangement.
What page was that again?
In mine, it's 253. But
I
don't know if we have the same page.
Oh yeah, we have different editions.
It's pretty early in the chapter. It's
well, so
4 pages into the chapter, towards the bottom.
Right.
Organ derangement. John Hunter.
Yeah. Well, so right, 'cause so he was the guy we talked about last time. Right. Right. In his view, what was the role of the dissector not only to identify the organ derangement, but to see it as one evolutionary phase, one instant in an ongoing dynamic process of disease. Disease.
Like Sean Connery.
Why did I say it like that? Which a disease process evolves to the point in which it's encountered. Yeah, so I think it might have to do with that terrain. I don't know, actually, to be honest. When I think about it, I find that interesting too, and I think he might be oversimplifying it because it's like
maybe
gets at this idea of like, of course, people understood that things progressed, but I think it might have been getting at more of this idea again that they're also getting like starting to look at the underlying the pathology as this is what they were doing. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but I think it was like they were starting to realize maybe the distinctness within the disease processes, because as they were able to get the microscope, they could become more specific in noticing that, that makes sense. Isn't just, I don't know though, but that's how I think about the big development that happened in the 19th century though, at least. It's like, that's the big thing that we got. Whereas it was a lot more lo-fi before then, and that it was like, you look at diseases as sort of like disequilibriums first off of the body. So sort of that terrain theory idea. Maybe that's what it is. It's like,
right. But I actually see the development of germ theory, and maybe this is wrong. Maybe I'm connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. But as a long-term development from older religious and superstitious theories of being possessed. And the idea that you have invisible demons or souls or something in you that's causing your ailment versus the idea that you have invisible beings, I mean, bacteria or whatever, viruses, you have these invisible living things inside you.
So I see
and then we get to the spot where we they could be visible under certain circumstances. But
yeah, I could see a case being made for that. I think you could sort of argue that everything that we do now in the modern world has some basis in like our spiritual.
But either it has a basis in the spiritual, or the spiritual was the best way of describing what feels like the natural intuition.
Right.
That there's something inside you that we can't see that's causing a problem.
Right. Yes. Maybe. Yeah.
The problem's coming from within rather than from without, and we can't see what it is.
Right. We don't know the causative process, but we know that there's some sort of output that's associated. Yeah, no, I agree. And so, and I was just going to say, I do think he simplifies things and because he talks about how it was understood that even, for millennia that like the idea of bad air and stuff like that. Right. And even actually Benjamin Franklin was sort of a big proponent of the idea that like you could respire and transmit disease and sort of have bad air. Because I remember there's a story in one of his biographies, not autobiography, in one of his biographies by Walter Isaacson. It tells a story about him sleeping with John Adams. It's kind of funny because you're just thinking about it's like the two founding fathers.
Dude, that's pretty hot.
Yeah, and they're like traveling before they go to Paris together or something, and they have to stay in an inn.
Better and better. Oh.
Right. So it's
Is
just
this like a
two 50-year-old founding fathers, or I mean, he was probably like 70 at the time because Franklin. I forgot.
Did they actually have another room and
I have
Franklin
no.
was like, oh no, they don't have another room.
Yeah, I mean, it's who knows. I mean, it does make you wonder how they couldn't find another room for the two, like these two important people. But anyway, they end up sleeping in the same room, in the same bed, and John Adams is also like sick, so he's coughing, and so long story short, Benjamin Franklin's just like, we should open the window. John Adams didn't want to because he thought that was actually bad. And Franklin, and so it was emphasizing, I remember that because it was emphasizing that, back then, and this would have been end of the 18th century, it still wasn't quite understood, like even that you could transmit things respiratorily. I mean, some people understood it, and this is the thing, is like just now, some people understand things, but in the general sort of like who's the person teaching most of the healers in the society, it wasn't sort of the dogma. I guess that's maybe the point that he's making, too, that like maybe they weren't looking at the evolution of diseases as much until the 19th century. And that's how I look at it too, is that's what I was going to say, is like it's in the 19th century that you have the sort of sub-delineation of all of these diseases, and a lot of these diseases that we have named now got named in the 19th century. Alzheimer's got named, 1907, but, it's still like 100 years ago. So the point is a lot of stuff got named back then, and which emphasizes this fact that you had this sort of paradigm shift in how we think about medicine. Yeah. But anyway, I'm so long-winded. I'm sorry.
Well, are you? I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Oh.
You could go. You keep going.
I could wind all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, but I thought you would like him though, because it's like, I don't know. Did you like him? I mean,
I did like him. I don't like the writer of this book.
Yes, the writer's. I mean, he's a surgeon.
Like I have things highlighted that it's like this is silly. Like he's being goofy in dumb ways.
I think you got to look at it as this is a guy who I think he was a Yale surgeon for many years, and he wrote it in like the 80s. So he's probably like of a very, I mean, you could see how flowery he writes with.
The Pathological Institute at the University of Vienna was like a concert hall of medicine.
I know.
In which the artists of one branch of healing performed what might be called an organ recital for the artists of another.
You could tell he's a surgeon.
Like, come on, dude.
I know. I agree.
A lot. You're really.
I agree completely. I mean,
I feel like I know he's being cheeky, but it's one of those things where it's like he's not funny. It's like the old guy at the conference that makes a joke that everyone.
Well, and it makes the book harder to read than it needs to be, because it's like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, I completely agree. Because he has a lot of good facts, honestly.
Right.
It's a very well researched book, is why I like it so much. But yeah, no, I agree with all that. Actually, 100%.
Yeah,
he's very flowery in his writing.
So another point that stuck out to me was, maybe it's another case of him being overly general, or maybe it's him reflecting Semmelweis and the idea of the time. But he talks about, to return to a very useful smallpox analogy, only smallpox can produce another case of smallpox. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. That smallpox is caused by smallpox viruses or something like that. And that is what is meant by a contagion, which is distinguished from what Semmelweis is talking about. An abscessed tooth or infected uterine cancer cannot cause smallpox, but the pus from them can cause childbed fever.
Yeah, I also thought that was a bad.
Because it's the pus isn't necessarily causing anything. It's the specific, like if there's staph and you end up getting a staph infection, that's from that particular pathogen, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, it's a good point. A lot of this probably was staph.
Right. Well, it was just a guess. I don't know if it was.
No, I mean, it would have been a lot of things, but I mean, staph is just everywhere. Staph and E. coli, those are just two bacteria that, staph is all over the outside of your body. So anytime you're like cutting, that's why you have the ability that you could like get a staph infection if, you have some, I mean, you have to, anyway, it's just we're getting into other things, but staph is all over your body, all over your skin, I should say. And E. coli is in your gut. Right. And so you can imagine, if you're cutting into bodies, and then also you're cutting in the gut. I mean, you're going to have stuff everywhere. And then there's all sorts of other
stuff everywhere.
There's all sorts of other anaerobic bacteria too, but I was just thinking of the first two.
Yeah.
Came to mind. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I thought that was a poorly. It was. I don't know. It was confusingly written, and I felt like it wasn't a great analogy.
Well, because it starts off fine. I'm with you about the smallpox can only cause smallpox.
Right.
It's like, that makes sense.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Then it takes a weird turn.
Yeah. Yeah. No. There were a few times where I had to sort of reread it because I was like, "What is he trying to say here?" I don't know if I can find something quickly, but yeah. I thought also it's just like it gets back at this idea though of. I guess having courage to like, I mean, the author makes an interesting point about how, well, I guess I already made this point. I mean, he was going up against like the biggest names of the day. So it's tough to do that. I mean, if you imagine, and as we're seeing now for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Anyway. I mean, with tons of things.
Yes. Yeah.
So what if we zoom out on that? How do you feel about that? About the courage of your convictions? Because the bass player in one of my groups, Sap and Claw Elixir, has a very strong belief that if you think something is right, it's wrong for you not to do that, no matter what that is. So he has not a non-specific view on that. So if you think it's right to kill babies or something like that, then that's what you should be spending your time doing. That whoever you are, should follow your conviction.
I guess I'm assuming you're explaining it. That mean he means all of that? Because I mean, it just sounds like that can't be true. Because it's like, what does it mean? You should spend all your time doing that?
No. But more like the idea of right and wrong isn't determinable by us. Mm-hmm. And so like different people have different ideas of what right and wrong are, and what a good thing to do and a bad thing to do. And so his perspective is the best thing you can do as any person is to do what you think is right, versus the idea of there is a right and wrong, and it's wrong to do this and it's right to do that. That's all dependent on your own conviction or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I sort of agree and I sort of disagree.
Right.
I don't know. How do you feel?
Well, probably because you and I probably have intuitions of things that feel obviously the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And so if somebody else has an intuition that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. But I'm also not, I have a social sense. So it's like, on whatever topic it is, I'm going to probably, assuming it's not anything horrendous, I'm probably going to not want to like argue with the other person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is like, I don't really care what the other person is assuming it's not sort of directly impacting me. I guess, am I a libertarian? No.
Well, yeah, that's a certain type of libertarian. There's another type of libertarian that thinks that you should always speak. Like objectivists and the whole Ayn Rand movement, that it's actually immoral and unconscionable not to speak a truth that you believe to be true in the face of somebody else speaking something.
So you're saying he's an objectivist, your friend, then?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he actually is.
I mean, that sounds like essentially what you just said.
But actually, what you just said is interesting. I agree with you. I do what you do probably more often than not. Not argue with people in the name of not getting into some stupid thing socially. Yeah.
Well, it's also because sorry, you're saying something.
No, keep going. I'm interested in your perspective on that.
Well, I was just going to say, it's like I also assume that I'm wrong about a lot of things, but other people have more, I think, just self-confidence in a way. It's weird because it's like I don't also feel like I lack self-confidence, but I do question conclusions that I make, logical conclusions. I question logical conclusions to maybe insane degree because I've been wrong so many times.
Right.
So I have to sort of, it's just from a lifetime of realizing that if I just assume that I made a logical, like if I didn't check a logical statement, I can't assume that it's right. Some
Right.
people I feel like can make that and are more assured that they're correct. They can do that check more quickly and more, these are what smart people. I think you'd call them smart people. But yeah. But I've never been like that. And so that's why it's like I'm much more likely to not argue with somebody, especially if I'm talking with them and maybe try to hear out why they believe in what they believe so that I can then sort of check it against mine. But of course, if I check it against mine and then feel very strongly about it, I mean, it's just all going to depend. But no, I don't take an absolute opinion like your friend where it's like, if I believe something, I need to, act on it. What does that mean, I guess? And does that mean you, maybe I was interpreting that to mean
you
that
should
act
follow,
on it
you should
and
follow your
evangelize? And evangelize? Does that mean that you have to evangelize?
Not necessarily evangelize.
Oh.
So there's like the people pleaser mentality that what you should do is go around trying not to hurt other people's feelings or disturb their sort of sensibilities. Mm-hmm. And that can go to an extreme where basically you don't act at all ever. Or the far objectivist viewpoint that you absolutely should speak what you believe to be true, and doubt in your own conviction is bad.
Right.
So the thing that you were saying about doubting your own conclusions is really bad from an objectivist perspective. I have the same thing as you. I doubt my conclusions. Actually, I have a positive belief that anything that I believe to be true is most likely wrong.
Really?
That
interesting.
Given the possibilities of the universe, any conclusion I have is probably wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm putting bets on it, I'm probably not correct.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever thought about that. It's just an interesting thing to think about. I'm probably wrong. Like, what does it mean to be wrong? I mean, this is what I don't know. I guess this is a philosophy question. But you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like all a little bit.
Semmelweis was seemingly right.
Right, and that's I guess the point though is it's all contextual, and it's like
there's also different kinds of right too, because we can be confused about sort of the specifics of what a virus is or what it's doing, but then there can be the empirical thing about if you wash your hands you have better results.
Right.
And so even if you can't specifically trace every step of the way as to why you have better results, you can at least say it's working.
Which gets to your thing that you were saying about spirituality, how a lot of these probably came from, we didn't necessarily understand why something was working, but it then became tradition. We kept doing something, but then you repeat stuff and you add things to every repetitive process because that's just what we do. I mean, especially...
There's the other problem of you can think something's working if it's not. And I see this, I actually see this in the medical industry, but I see it in the religious community even more. Like the belief in the power of prayer or something like that. And I'm not saying prayer does or doesn't work.
No, it does.
There's no way of determining whether it is or isn't working.
Well, it's the placebo effect, which is the power of the mind, essentially, which is that variable that is tough. Because it's this connection. And I say this as, honestly, probably a materialist. So when I say, like, prayers have... like a mental effect, that's what I mean. It's like any repetitive thing that you repeat in your mind could potentially have a physiologic effect because the mind is connected to the body, and so it's this idea that I completely agree with the concept that you can program yourself. You know what I mean? Because if we do that every time we practice guitar, we're programming ourselves through repetitive action. We're memorizing things through repetitive action when we are trying to write them out and everything like that. So we know that we can, I guess.
We can.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel like prayer, especially repetitive prayer, can actually have a physiological effect. Not necessarily the one that you think that it's going to have, but it can have one, I guess is all I would say. But anyway, I don't know why I got on that tirade.
Well, I guess the whole thing is interesting to me because we're talking about two people who are really pushing their conviction for what they think is correct and right. With Semmelweis, there's even more of sort of a moral push behind it.
Right.
Because he's talking about life-saving
right.
Acts or steps that you could add that'll help to save lives and things like that. But that's an interesting topic in and of itself about where that morality comes from, because like what you're saying, through repetitive behavior you can sort of train ideas and things like that. But then there's the other side, and I could be spicy and use a term like safe and effective. You could say it every day, all the time. You could say it.
What are you getting at?
You could say it anywhere. But so, like as a mantra, it doesn't make it true, and it doesn't mean it is or isn't true. But you can actually, or you can attempt to affect the outcomes of situations by repetitive behaviors like that. Right. So if you're doing that and you are doing something that is knowingly untrue in the name of pushing for a larger, greater good or something like that, this is where things start to get tricky. Because Semmelweis, I feel like, is taking the opposite approach. He's saying something that he thinks is true, and he's giving no quarter. He's saying, no, you're wrong and you're killing people. Not like, I understand, but let's try it. There's nothing. It's like, you're wrong and you're killing people. This is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah. So I didn't know if you had a conclusion.
There's actually, I have no conclusion. Well, it's like, this is the weirdness of ideas and when to put them forward and how to put them forward. So I'm relating it back to the Justin Martyr thing about philosophy, and the idea of the pursuit of truth versus the holding up of authoritative systems or something like that.
Right.
And where the moral imperative is. Should we be pursuing truth in and of itself, no matter what, or should we be trying to hold up these structures that are socially important in certain ways?
Well, and I was going to try to make a point about the placebo effect. Mm-hmm. That was the thing I kept forgetting. Because it's the placebo effect's not necessarily about repetition. It's also about belief. So it's just this belief that something's going to work. So, yeah, the safe and effective point that you made, maybe, though, by saying that, it's like you can hack into something in your body where your nervous system is then upregulating some immunologic antigen like signal.
That'd be cool.
So this is essentially what it's kind of crazy to go into it from here, but it's not unprecedented to think that there's a connection between the nervous system, which is the brain, and the immune system. Right. And this has been shown through vagal stimulation, which is the vagus nerve is one of the biggest cranial nerves. It's cranial nerve 10, and it does most of your parasympathetic control for your peripheral nervous system. Has origins in the brainstem, but the point is that it has been found to basically when you activate it, cholinergic activation, which is the main sort of receptor that the vagus nerve is going to signal through. There are immune, I guess we would call them molecules that can sort of stimulate these cholinergic receptors and thus cause sort of vagal stimulation. And also, there's been found, I think, doing vagal stimulation can dampen certain things. But again, I'm getting out of my realm here. But the point is, it's not completely foo-foo. People are looking at this, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the placebo thing's crazy.
It is.
Is it true? I think I've heard that even if people know it's a placebo, it has a high placebos still work very well, even when it's known that they're placebos.
I don't know that data specifically, but I would believe that because there's this weird thing. It can be like. And we have to correct for this every clinical trial that we do. We have to have you have to basically trick people and make them think that they're getting the treatment so that they'll sort of any effect will sort of take the placebo effect into account. Right. Because, everybody's going to think that they're getting the treatment essentially, which is why where the idea of blinding the study comes from. So that, yeah, but anyway. So yeah, so to your overall question about conviction, I don't have a good answer either.
Okay. Yeah, great.
But I have a philosophical
It's a funny answer to that question.
Yeah. I mean, but because I think it comes, I could give you one thing. My conviction, I'll tell you how my convictions weighted. It's weighted by evidence and lot, as much as it can be. And I think that's sort of the driving point in this book and sort of in the last episode in this one, and what Semmelweis did and what Vesalius did is that they accumulated evidence for their idea. And like you're saying, yes, Semmelweis was very staunch, but he did run the experiment. Even though he didn't publish it, he did run the experiment. Right. So he had this confidence.
He had evidence.
It wasn't delusional. It was so that's what I mean. So yeah, actually, I think that would be my answer. Is like that's where the conviction should come. Is you should, and that's just because I'm a scientist. Is that's of course I'm going to think that way. Is you should,
Mr. Scientist.
Well, yeah, and you should be most staunch about the thing that has the most evidence.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I have a cheap point at the end of this is I hate the term evidence-based.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody says evidence-based, I immediately am suspicious of them.
Yeah, we get into these bad habit of
data-driven.
Yeah, data-driven buzzwords that
it's like I think that it's probably not evidence-based then.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you fooling?
Yeah. Well, it's just there's only so many ways to describe things generally. And then, I mean, that's the problem. Because it's
kind of like there's an old Eugene Merman joke about going by a Burger King, and it says 100% real chicken tenders. And he's like, I never would have assumed that they weren't real.
Right, but now that you said it's evidence-based. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I think there's also this talk about how like you got to get good at communicating what you do to the lay audience, which is understandable. It makes sense. But there's a lot of people sort of just trying to give you the perspective coming from the inside. That's harped on a lot. And I think in doing that, though, you can fall into this like elevator pitch. And whenever you try to come up with an elevator pitch that somebody's going to understand that doesn't have a lot of background, you're going to fall into these like just open-ended and broad descriptions like evidence-based and quantum. I mean, quantum is everywhere now.
Like quantum computing?
Just you add quantum to something and it becomes like...
quantum evidence-based?
Yeah, or like whatever. It's just like I'm just giving you another example of like where evidence, I would say, is sort of the key word in that. And so I'm just saying like another sort of example is like, or like, because you also hear follow the science, right? You hear that too.
Or the science is settled. That's my favorite.
The science is settled, yes.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Science is settling down for bed.
All
right, so what should we do?
Is that what your kid's name is?
The science.
The science.
And I follow the science all the time. Like, get back here, science.
Yeah. I hope your kid's not already walked. Sorry, I shouldn't talk about it. The kid, the child.
Well, no, it's all right. Maybe since I have a small child, the 5 million listeners will be kind enough to donate lots of money to this podcast.
Yeah, as they should. To the many...
I mean, because look at this. We're in dark rooms. Imagine if we had, like, nice production.
I know.
And we don't even have a video yet, but, like,
Yeah.
Sign up on Patreon, which isn't set up yet, but when it is,
When it is. Oh, I was going to say, do we want to do, like, guests?
Sure.
Yeah, might as well.
Maybe, like, every now and then. Maybe not every episode.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I don't think we should do every episode.
Do you want to do one more out of this? One more in medical and then pivot?
Yeah. I'm down.
And we could do this book, or if there's a different book you had in mind.
I got tons of things that we could talk about, but I feel like we should do something that you want to do next because I wanted to do this. So
I'll get really like
fair.
into like I don't know, like Babbitt or something like that, something crazy.
Oh God, I completely forgot about Babbitt.
Right here.
No, it's
I love
fine.
it. I love it.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't have said "oh God" in a disparaging.
No, it's okay.
I didn't mean it in disparaging.
I just
honestly, I forgot about Babbitt.
Yeah.
It's a name I hadn't heard in a long time. So yeah, I don't know. So there's Lister. I mean, we read through this last time. The people I think are interesting are Lister, Halstead.
What about the anesthesia one?
So we talked about that last time. That
Okay.
It is an interesting story, but it is one of the more. That's probably the most told story out of this book.
I see. Okay.
It's been so if we want to be, yeah. NPR did I think it was Radiolab did I don't know if it's famous. I mean, it's Radiolab, so it's sort of famous. It was an early one too. It was good. Nice. Yeah. I mean, we could if you
go back to the
really
beginning, Hippocrates.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or Galen's interesting. We didn't talk about Galen. I mean, we probably should.
And I don't know what Pergamon is. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot about. Oh, he was like an intermediate guy. I forgot about him. Sorry, I shouldn't say intermediate.
He was like
we just forgot about him. Ambrose Paré was another interesting guy, though. Okay. Just because it was but I think Galen would be more interesting.
All right, let's do it. Galen.
Yeah, and I already sort of disparaged his drawings in the first episode. So.
Yeah. So we can do a little more of that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Pergamon. Oh, I thought. Sorry, there was another guy, Pericles. I heard that as Pericles.
You're not that into Pericles.
I'm not that into Pericles. Pericles, I think, was overrated. And sort of got the whole industry of chemistry off, He's kind of like the Galen of chemistry, actually, come to think of it.
Is it Galen or Galen?
It might have been Galen.
I don't know.
Or no, Galen. I think you might be right. I feel like I hear people say Galen.
Okay. Well, if I read it Galen, I'd assume Galen.
But. You assume Galen? I assume Galen. I don't know why.
Nice.
It's that Chicago accent. Chicago. I think actually that is. Yeah, it's Chicago. Galen.
Man.
Galen.
I have a friend of mine in Austin he's a drummer. And he's from Waukesha, and he's got such a great Eastern Wisconsin accent.
Wow,
I love the Waukesha, Milwaukee accent.
Yeah, it's
Milwaukee.
Funny. Did you notice it until you left? Because I didn't really appreciate it until I left.
Not that much. Every now and then, if I see the Madison Public Library, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Just the word Madison, Milwaukee.
Both. That was the big thing I realized that I brought from the Midwest. Both. We add an L in both.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I don't know why we do that.
I'd never thought about that. That's true.
Yeah, both. We add an L for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do Galen. Oh, I didn't ask you how to. How do you think this? Do you know how to pronounce the? So it's puerperal fever, right?
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, puerperal. Even though it's
no, I don't. I had no idea.
Yeah, I looked it up. I don't even know.
I think I read it as perpetual. Yeah. Actually, if I'm being honest, when I was reading over it, I think I read as perpetual, and I have a note what is that?
Right. So we're talking about that's what the fever was actually called that Semmelweis was treating, puerperal fever.
Nice.
Which is spelled like puerperal, P-U-E-R, right?
I honestly, I'm not even on it right now. I read it as perpetual. That's what it was in my mind.
Because it's P-U-E-R. But anyway. So it's which is just inflammation of the female reproductive tract.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, and I was honestly trying to think.
What is obstetric? What does that actually mean? What is the word obstetrics?
I mean, it's... You're putting me on the spot. I should know this. I'm cutting this out.
Well, maybe you...
Cutting this out. You make me look like an idiot.
But you used my name. What the hell?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. You're right. I got to cut it out now. Cut this whole dang episode out.
Cut the whole episode out.
Okay. Obstetric? What does the word mean? Or where does it come from? Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Well, I don't know. I actually don't know.
I was trying to think where puerperal or pioperal comes from, because I am thinking in terms of female anatomy. I'm probably being stupid right now, but are you looking it up?
Yeah.
What's the Latin? It probably means something in Latin.
Well, obstetrics is the study of the field concentrated on pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Makes sense, because like OBGYN.
Oh, were you asking about what it focuses on, or where?
No, what it actually means.
Like, okay, good. Yeah, because I could have told you what it focuses on. I don't want people to think I don't know that.
From obstetric. It's not a very old word.
Oh, yeah?
1819.
Hey.
Oh, wait a minute. Obstetric, 1742. Still not that old. Of or pertaining to a midwife or midwifery. It's from Latin, and obstetricus is a midwife.
Okay. So, yeah, it's not named after the body part or anything like that.
So, that's funny. So, an obstetrician, like the word means that they're a midwife.
Well, I don't know if you saw that, but I think it seems like it was more common for midwives to deliver even back then.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, makes sense. And it was, they kept sort of talking about how it was sort of like, well, yeah, anyway.
So how do you spell this other one? I can look
Puerperal. Puerperal is how I read it. But it's nice. Pioperal is how you pronounce it.
Fever?
Yeah.
Etymology. This is great. This is good radio right here.
It's amazing. I mean, like, I think we've basically got probably up to 7 million a minute now.
Just trying to make noise, like fill the space.
No, it's good. I should be talking.
Vamp, quick.
Yeah. Man, thank you, man.
Okay,
Suffragette
of or pertaining
City.
to childbirth, about to give birth. Latin, puerperis, bringing forth children, or bearing a child. Okay. From puer, which is a child. Puer, which is child. We had puer something in music history. Puer natus. Childbirth. Puer natus, right?
Hey, man, you take this. This is
a Christmas mass. It all goes back. This is crazy. Puer natus est. Remember?
We started the episode with
the birth of the child is.
We started the episode with my autism, and we end with yours. I don't remember that at all.
Oh, man.
But the names of all the songs that we had to learn. Ask me the dates. I'll tell you the dates. But the names, please.
You're like, that one was 1152.
Yeah. Oh, and we didn't talk about this at all, but we could do a whole episode about the 1848 revolution. Everything going on in Vienna. It was like.
So what I'm thinking, I like at least the theme for now of, instead of necessarily talking about an event like that, talking about the history of a discipline or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like the history of music theory could be cool, or the history I don't know if that one would be cool in particular. I don't know, the history of some movement is kind of cool, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I agree. Maybe doing it, you're saying, with the context, not just talking about like the...
Well, because like, if we talk about, like the history of the 1848 revolutions, I feel like there's going to be historians who are going to do that really well, and there's going to be like drunk history that's going to do it in sort of a fun way. We're like this terrible spot
I know
in
what
the
you
middle.
mean.
Like,
yeah, we are.
Yeah,
it's a good point. We are in this. Well, and generally we're in this kind of weird spot in the middle. Right. Because it's true. It's like we're not comedians and we're not like the experts. So what are we doing?
We're just fucking idiots. Like, it's a great question. Why would anybody listen to us talk about this stuff? Like, if somebody pitched it to me, I'd probably be like,
yeah,
okay.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
At least you have expertise in medicine, so that makes sense.
Well,
so that's why I
mean,
keep going to music theory. But the
let's be
but the
careful
thought of
with
us
the word
talking about the history of
expertise.
music theory sounds like really dry.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Well, and with respect to the 1848 revolution, I also see what you're saying.
But actually, an idea that I had was we could go through some of Thaddeus Russell's renegade history, just because that's sort of like an interesting history and the way he approaches it, because his whole theory of renegade history is that renegades, i.e., criminals and prostitutes and drug dealers and blah, 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 had just as much effect on cultural changes as generals and presidents and kings and blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It's sort of a bottom-up look at history.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I like that.
So it's sort of fun.
Yeah, no, that is cool. Yeah, well, it's interesting because all this Semmelweis stuff was making me think about Carlyle, too, who was writing basically at the same time about and it was just making me think how he is the exact epitome of that old guard that Bill Roth was talking about. It was just like this guy, because I mean, Carlyle historically is talking like he's pro-slave. He's an apologist for slavery. He's an apologist for the enslavement of the Irish people too, and just like he's a royalist.
That one's wild. That's a very spicy one.
Yes,
I've gotten into so many arguments with people where they're like, the Irish were never enslaved, and it's like.
You've gotten into arguments with people about that?
Oh yeah. It's a whole. There's an idea out there that's a myth created. It's a myth created to downplay the slavery of Africans.
Oh. Well, yeah. I always end up getting us into these holes.
Well, it's not a hole. It's fine. Nobody knows who Mr. X is.
Well, why'd I have to bring up Carlisle?
I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well,
and you said you're from Chicago. They're zeroing in.
Dude, it's ridiculous.
It's not like there's that many people in Chicago.
No, there's not. I bring him up because it's like, again, it just made me think when they were talking about the people that Semmelweis was going up against, and that was the whole point. When I was reading this, I was thinking about all this other stuff going on at 1848. It's just interesting that it was the same time all this stuff that Semmelweis was doing, and then he gets kicked out. It's just
right. I mean, it was a wild time.
It was a wild time.
History. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, and then Vienna was like the New York of Europe. I mean, maybe London was the New York of Europe, but I don't know. It was like the LA of Europe, whatever. It was. Maybe it was like the. Actually, yeah, it was kind of like the LA of Europe. Yeah, it was like yeah, because you had all the musicians.
Where's the New Orleans of Europe?
You had all the musicians, and it was like the center of culture and stuff like that. And it was like all the rock stars, all the cool, like Paganini lived in Vienna. know, yeah,
that's right. Breaking strings,
doing crazy stuff.
But
Lord only knows. Everybody had STDs. Like everybody died of STDs. It's either syphilis.
Sexy.
Yeah, it was either syphilis or.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. This is basically just syphilis.
I like
and tuberculosis, but
nice.
It's not an STD.
All right.
Yeah. Are we done? I guess we're done.
I think so. I think we did it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll try to push this out tomorrow.
Okay.
And yeah, so we'll do Gallon next week.
If you want, we can take turns. I can edit it next week.
Oh, it's whatever.
Okay. I mean, especially without video, it doesn't take that long.
No, it doesn't take long at all. I was honestly wondering. I mean, it was almost making me think maybe I should just post a video. Why are we not?
But then it
videos?
says our name. So if you're trying to hide our names, because it says it on the Zoom.
So you just crop it out, right?
You could do that.
Or add
you could put our logo down there or something.
Yeah, I could just do something like that. Okay, so you're not against the video being put on YouTube?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'll think.
No. I liked your idea of the Patreon thing. I think maybe.
It's like, when's that gonna happen?
I don't know. I mean, so the Value for Value Network, we can get the podcast on there.
What is this network? Is that the Bet Davids network? What is this?
It's Podcasting 2.0 it's a whole list of. I can send you a link to it. It's kind of neat. It's a list of apps that work on a value for value system, which exchanges Satoshis. And so if you listen to, I listen to most of my podcasts through that, and you get Satoshis as you listen, and you can route those to the podcaster if you like them, or you can donate Satoshis. So the energy that's used from your phone sort of essentially collects Satoshis.
Oh, wow.
And you can route them.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah. And so you get this little like economy. I have like, $6.50, 30,000 Satoshis or something.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, no, I'm all for that. I wasn't familiar. Yeah, and like I haven't made an Instagram or anything, but it's like I don't know what.
We might not need an Instagram.
Yeah, it's like I don't. Yeah.
At least not now. Let's just do it step by step. But
yeah, I don't know if we need any social media. Honestly, it's like
maybe not.
But
can you send me the RSS link though, so I can put it on?
You can. You have the ability to find it.
Did you give me the login? For
this? You have. Yeah, I can resend that to you. But
okay. If you
have all the passwords, but
okay.
I can resend it. I don't know when I send it. If I think I texted it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can email it. And yeah, you can just log on to Anchor and it'll be on there.
So I can get it on. Is it on Amazon? Have you done that yet?
It's not on Amazon.
Okay, so I'll do Amazon and Apple.
Okay.
And then Podcasting 2.0.
Okay, cool. Okay, sounds good. All right.
Sweet. All right, next Wednesday, does that work? Same time?
Yep, that works.
Sweet. All right, cool. And I'll upload these.
Sounds good.
All right, talk to you later.
See ya. Are we